It's official. It's over.
Retro Bassin, kicking some ass and wearing rayon jackets. Thinking about Bill Dance, watching these fish prance through my Ray-Ban glasses. Ain't nothing better than 40-year-old lures coming off of Zepco 33. Out on the bass boat, making beer cans float, doing some trespassing. Fishing it old school, this old stuff rules. Welcome to Retro Bassin.
Welcome to Retro Bassin. This is an episode that I've kind of been putting off a little bit, to be honest with you. The title of the episode is true. The Retro Bassin studio, as you know it, is officially closing down today. There's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, so don't worry. But everything that you see around you, the channel, in many ways, as you know it, will never be the same after this. But before we get into what the future plans are for Retro Bassin, I do want to talk a little bit about the journey that's gotten us to this point. I know that a lot of the Bassin Buds have been along for the journey since its inception. Others might have just hopped on board the old retro wagon after my little banjo minnow rabbit hole that I went down in a pretty serious way. I think I've talked about this in one other video, but I actually started the Retro Bassin YouTube channel with the plans of creating a channel just like this. My first camera was a GoPro Hero 3, and it was actually right around the time that all of the Guggen Squad were starting their various channels. I had the first 12 episodes written, but unfortunately when it came time to filming, when it came time to get behind this thing and actually deliver content, for whatever reason I was just unable to do so. I kind of put the channel on the shelf for a number of years until I moved from Maryland to Texas. As part of the move, I had my 19-foot Skeeter bass boat, and unfortunately it would not fit in my garage, and for that reason I had to get rid of it, and I was in the search for a new boat. Happened to be at the Bass Pro Shops up in Dallas, Texas, and I saw one of the few remaining 2018 Tracker Heritage. This was the boat that definitely sent me back on the retro path, and you throw in an ad by Roland Martin, Jimmy Houston, and Bill Dance, and son, I was sold. So I picked up the boat. Episode number 1 was kind of featuring me rigging it old school, and ever since then, 4 years ago, we have been dropping old school content just about every weekend when I can. Growing up on the Severn River, my roots are definitely brackish and saltwater, but I definitely caught the largemouth bass bug thanks to my Uncle Don, who had a pretty big property out in Howard County, Maryland, on which sat a private, I think it was like a 3 to 5 acre lake called Buckskin Lake. Sometime early in development, my uncle had stocked it with some fingerling largemouth bass, and no one had ever fished for it. I remember the first time I went to a Buckskin, I think I might have been a freshly minted teenager, and I had my lid locker tackle box packed with some lures that I'd picked up recently from Bass Pro Shops. Well, those were some of the most furious and wild hours that I ever had bass fishing. Those fish, again, had not ever seen a lure in about the 3 years that they'd been alive, so when I got there, son, it was on. Over the years, we continued to fish Buckskin Lake whenever possible, even though it was like a little bit of a drive from Annapolis. I remember my buddy Jay and I spent many a day chasing the largemouth bass on Buckskin Lake, catching them on old school poppers, hula poppers, power pack shads, grass frogs, sluggos, you name it. After graduating college with a degree in journalism, I moved up to Point Pleasant, New Jersey, where I picked up the mantle as managing editor for the Big Game Fishing Journal. Fast forward a few years later, I ended up moving back down to Annapolis, Maryland, picked up a bass boat, and could not wait to get it on the tidal Potomac River. It was a body of water that I had read about for years from local legend, fishing guide, and author Ken Penrod. And I definitely reignited my love affair with bass fishing in those summers. Getting this channel off the ground since the purchase of that Bass Tracker Heritage in late 2018 has been an absolute blast. And even though I'm definitely not an expert of bass fishing in Texas, it has been really fun to learn the lakes around here. Spent a good bit of time on Lake Bastrop, Ladybird Lake, Lake Austin, and my new favorite, Lake Travis. These deep, rocky, clear Texas lakes have definitely been a challenge for me, but I think I'm finally getting the hang of it. But wouldn't you know, just when you get accustomed to one kind of fishing, your whole fishing world changes. As I mentioned, we're originally from the East Coast and have a ton of friends and family who are still back on that side of the country. Recent opportunity came up with my day job to get back east, and we're going to be moving. Like soon. And that is the tough thing about this one. I've definitely fallen in love with the state of Texas, fallen in love with the bass fishing, but we have two little kiddos, and their grandparents happen to be in the state of Florida. Luckily for me, I do have a bass and bud or two out in the state of Florida. Obviously, always talking to John and Lindia over at Small Water Charters, who live just outside of Okeechobee, as well as my buddy Ted Lincoln, who is up in Gainesville. So I am definitely going to make sure that we land around some bassy waters in Florida, and I cannot wait to see what the next chapter of life and also this retro bassin journey will bring. But in the meantime, I am in the Retro Bassin Studio, which is the last room of this house that has not been staged for realtor photographs. Surprisingly enough, I guess most potential buyers don't necessarily want all of this in the background, or I don't know, maybe they do. But I have been tasked with disassembling the studio because we have to get the house ready for realtor photos tomorrow. It's funny. In some ways, I've been putting this off because, quite frankly, it's just a lot of work to take it down. But at the same time, it is definitely closing the door on the first chapter of Retro Bassin. So much of this show, if you followed it from the early days, started right here in this studio. Now, the studio didn't look quite the same as it does now, but this is my happy space. This is where I come to just sit around, geek out, and share my passion for old school tackle with you guys. So, in a way, yeah, I've been putting this off because this is a tough door to close. In the interim, I am going to be still filming as much as I can. Definitely going to be doing some more on-the-water segments. And I will definitely do some more, we'll say, studio-type stuff. But unfortunately, I won't have the ambiance of the great Retro Bassin background for you. So I did think it would be an interesting episode as we are packing up shop here in Retro Bassin land to show you the studio, what it looks like, sort of give you a perspective on how the magic gets made, and also perhaps go through some of my favorite items here as we pack them up one last time. Okay, so before I go into disassembling the studio, I will give you a look at the Retro Bassin Studio, perhaps from an angle that you may not have gotten before. And I'll put on a light here as well, not to fan the light. So here is my home office, aka the Retro Bassin Studio. So behind me is where we film everything. This is a setup that I kind of have been working on for a little while now. Pretty happy with it. I've got some tackle boxes here. I've got some tackle boxes there. A couple of lights. This is where the old camera goes. Behind me, these shelves were previously filled with a bunch of tackle boxes. Unfortunately, I didn't get to film it nearly enough. I kind of had visions of doing some stand-up spots right here with that in the background, but that didn't happen. Maybe in the next place. Here's a little bus seat that I'm on. I had visions of kind of doing some podcast-style filming. Never got around to it, but maybe in the short term, while we're moving from Texas to Florida, I will make this my sort of home away from home as far as the studio goes. So over here is where the magic happens. This is my at-home computer. This is where I edit all of the Retro Bassin episodes. I use Adobe Premiere Pro, by the way, if anyone is out there and ever curious about what software I use. And here is a little webcasting setup that I've got. This is actually functional. I've used it, I think, once or twice with John and Lindia, but I definitely need to step up my live streaming game. In the interim, I am going to keep this setup going. I am going to continue to crank out episodes as much as humanly possible. Of course, we're going to be having to pack up and move in the interim.
I hitched the boat to the back of my truck. Called my friend, said let's go try our luck. Said I'm sorry buddy, I can't go. I'm watching the old Retro Bassin Fishing Show. I call a girl that's an angler and said, don't go fishing, I'll go out of my head. Said I'm sorry honey, I can't go. I'm watching the old Retro Bassin Fishing Show.
Well, all packed up. As I was packing up, you might have been thinking that I failed to mention where in the state of Florida we would be moving, and actually it wasn't an oversight. We actually don't know. Looking to get somewhere in the central Florida vicinity, likely on the East Coast, but aside from that, really, the Sunshine State is our oyster. So in the comment section below, please let me know the bassiest waters that you know in the state of Florida and some potential areas for old retro to check out next time we head out there. In the meantime, guys, thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for hopping on this crazy retro wagon whenever you did, whether it was 4 years ago or 4 days ago. Definitely looking for some guidance in the days, weeks, and months ahead on what kind of content you would like. Obviously, things are going to look a little bit different around here, but you know what? Change can be good. As always, thanks for the comments. I read them all, respond to as many as possible, the likes, and also the subscriptions. If you're looking for more old school content, click right here. Otherwise, I will see you, well, maybe not back here, but I'll see you next Saturday. Same time, same place. And until then, keep the carpet side up. And definitely, fish it old school.
Fishing it old school, this old stuff rules. Welcome to Retro Bassin.